Well, what does God look like? Well, as we said, God's not an old man with a beard, wearing robes. Some of those funny images that we like to have and are in paintings and things. Truth is, God, we reflect God in many ways, in the sense that we are made in God's image, which is what we see in the book of Genesis. But God is not human, and God is not part of the created order. God is not a physical being like we are. He's not part of what we would call the physical universe. God is actually something more profound. God is spirit and God is truth. And figuring out what that means, well, that's a life's work. And philosophers and theologians and people throughout the ages have speculated on what God looks like, what does spirit look like, what does truth look like. And truth is certainly a concept in short supply these days. We don't like truth because truth might present some absolutes and it might have some black and white about it. And I don't think we have that access ourselves. I mean, I think there's a whole bunch of grey that we operate in, but God himself has no grey. God, and when I say himself, I'm not referring to his maleness or femaleness either. God is, as I said, not human, so he's not male or female. And there is an interesting exception to that, and I'll talk about that soon. But the reality is that God is what we would call metaphysical or supernatural being. God is the creator of the universe. God is all powerful. God is omnipotent. Omnipresent. He was there in the beginning. He's there at the end. He's outside of time. I know a lot of people want to sort of go this whole idea of multiverses and dimensions. And if you want to stick with that, then you say God is beyond even those things. God is outside multiverses and God is outside dimensions. God is so much more than our minds can comprehend, and there probably lies the problem. It's a very human quality to want to pin things down into these nicely wrapped and shaped fast food items, Big Macs. We like our God to be easily consumable. We create these cookie cutter ideas of God, but God won't be limited by our thinking. So it's really important for us, if we want to have a really honest conversation with ourselves about who God is and what God looks like, then we really have to be willing to put aside any arrogant ideas we might have. And look, and I'm a scientist. When I became a scientist, I remember when I wrote my first book, the local newspaper interviewed me, and it was a great interview. I really enjoyed it. We talked about the book, and at that stage I was a pastor, and we talked about roles of pastor. And the funny thing was, is when the news article came out, the headline was "Ex-scientist, goes into religion." And of course, I'm not an ex-scientist. I'm a scientist. I mean, the whole point of being a scientist is it's a way of thinking. We're taught to come up with theory and test them. And so really that's what a scientist is a critical thinker willing to work with theories and test them with empirical data. So you're never an ex-scientist, and the reality is when it comes to exploring questions of who God is and what God looks like, it's not something we can do scientifically. And so I'll have my scientific colleagues say to me, you can't prove God, so why would I believe in God? And I go, well, of course you can't prove God. You can't prove a lot of things, but that doesn't mean it's not true, it's not real. And I think how we really understand what God looks like is when we start to understand that God is interested in you and me. And let's bring it back there, because that's what really matters, isn't it? What God looks like, and what does that mean for me? Well, what it means to me is that what God says about himself is that he loves his people. He wants to be in friendship with his people. He created us for friendship. He created us with some of his image, and so I believe that things like our creativity, things like our love of knowledge, our pursuit of knowledge, the pursuit of wisdom, our desire to love, all these things are things that reflect God's image. And so we can actually say a little bit about what God looks like that way. But there's another really important way we can say what God looks like, and that is when we understand that part of God's plan to be with humanity, and to give you the really short version, when God created us, we were given choice and free will, and we chose in our free will and choice to say, well, God, we want to be independent of you. And that's where we get the narrative of Adam and Eve from, and the knowledge of good and evil. And so God, in his truth seeking and ultimate knowledge, gave us that freedom to choose to be without him. And so then the great journey back is to choose to be with him. And you know, that's what God wants. God wants to live with us full time, but it has to be a choice that we make. He's not going to impose that on us. We have to choose that. But something else happened in the middle, and that was that in our choice to reject God, we chose a form of rebellion that was destructive to us and to others and to the world in which we live. You only have to see what we're doing to the planet, what we do to each other, to know that there is a thing called sin. And I'll talk more about what sin is in another video, so you can go looking for that one. So coming back to it, God, in his plan to be with us full time, forever, in perfection, God realized that he was the only one that could solve that problem. So he came and lived amongst us in the personhood of Jesus Christ, who we say was both fully God and fully human. And there's another video on that too, but that's a profound mystery in many ways, but it's the truth. And so when we want to know what God looks like, partly we can say, well, God looks a bit like Jesus. Jesus embraced our humanity. God embraced our humanity in a way that was new, and that is not the full reflection of who God is, but Jesus was definitely the embodiment of the fullness of God's divinity. And that again is another conversation and quite complex, but there it is. So if you want to know God and you want to know what God looks like, then I guess as Christian people living in this world, we look to Jesus. He is the author and perfecter of our faith. He is the one who leads us to the redemption of our bodies, our physical selves. He's the one who leads us to resurrection and new life. And so we look to him when we want to know what God looks like. So there you go. It gets way deeper than that, and maybe I'll do a video on that sometime for those who really love the deep dive stuff. But in a nutshell, what does God look like? Well, partially he looks a bit like you, but then he's not like you. He's not physical. Partially, and in many ways, Jesus is the fulfillment of who God is. And so part of what we see in his humanness is again something of God. But you know, one day we're all going to meet him face to face. So I'm looking forward to that. I hope you are too. And if you want to be sure that you're going to meet him face to face, then you need to really go looking into Jesus. And I've got some videos on that too, videos on salvation and heaven and things like that. So please click away, watch some more. I hope this has been helpful. If it is, I'd love you to like and subscribe, only for the reason that I'm a minnow in the world. And I'd love this to get out to more people. And the way we do that is through the algorithm. And the algorithm favors those with more likes and more subscribes. So yeah, please do that. I'm not going to ask for money. I'm not going to send you any requests or anything like that. I'm not trying to make money out of this. I'm just wanting to help people. I have a real desire to help people on the journey the way people have helped me. Paying it forward, I guess you might say. Anyway, bless you. Bye.